Ladies and gentlemen, Gandalf the Grey are here. Stand by. We have Robert Stanley with us. He used to sing with Megadeth a few years ago. Stand by. All right, here we go. Really excited, ladies and gentlemen. This is somewhat of a Halloween special, uncovering ancient underground cities in Arizona, Los Angeles, Malibu. There's an article from 1934. It made front page news, Los Angeles Times, saying they discovered a reptilian underground city with gold. Very exciting. And I want to let you know real quick, ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is brought to you in part by the Patriot Charger. Get yours today. This bad boy's got a flashlight so you can do seances in the dark, or you can find your keys or whatever. And it's also 6-in-1. So it's got a seatbelt cutter. It's got a window breaker if you get in a car accident. It's also got a plug-in. So instead of having to have one of these extra boxes to charge your phones or whatever, you can just use this thing. It's got an extra charger in it. Awesome. It plugs into your car. Very nice. And that's my shameless plug. If you click the link, you'll get a discount. If you get multiple units, Halo, you'll get an even bigger discount. And Robert, it is awesome to have you on the program here with us at the Leak Project. I know it's Halloween where you're at. It's almost Halloween here. So, man, what's going on?
Not much, Rex. It's great to be with you again.
Oh, it's always great to have you on the program. We get into some exciting conversations. I still remember that time we were having a conversation about breaking out of the Matrix, and I was in unusual format then. Yeah, unusual format, to say the least.
Yeah, that was fun.
Look at me now. So much better. Yeah, so let's get into, first of all, you've got a beautiful website, Unicus Magazine, a great website. I've got the link in the video description box. Let's talk about some of these. And also, I want to talk about the Lucifer letters that were sent to you, whether or not they're sent from Lucifer, but it just makes you think. You know what I mean? It's a very interesting idea, to say the least. Because if they really were sent from Lucifer, how would you know?
You can't. There's no way. You can't tell that much of anything from an email, right? Or a series of emails. But look, and here's the crazy part, is if it wasn't crazy enough, he's not the only one claiming to be En.ki or Lucifer writing to me. Because I mentioned on your show more than any other, even coast to coast, this show has reached people more than any other, especially when it comes to En.ki or Lucifer. So, yeah, I mean, I put those letters up knowing that there's no way we can actually verify the identity of this person or the authenticity of the message in there. So you can read it for yourself. Yeah, just click on unicusmagazine.com. I use the homepage now as more like a bulletin board for people to just whatever's going on. All right, that's what I'm kind of updating things as they happen on the homepage. Yeah, I doubt that guy really is En.ki. You know, I mean, he thinks. But here's the craziest part. He thinks he is. It's obvious. You can read it in the letters. He's not just doing this because he's bored, you know, like he's not a troll as far as I can tell, or a bot. I really feel like this guy believes it. Can you imagine having that guy for a neighbor? He actually thinks he's Lucifer.
It'd be fun. Hey, give him a few drinks and see what he says. You know, start making the tidal waves split in the middle and stuff. It'd be wild. But check this out.
It's the world we live in, man. It's mostly illusions. It's really hard to. By the way, I gotta say, last time I was on with you, some of the stuff I told you was wrong, just straight out wrong, and I came to realize that it seemed like, in retrospect, that there was an effort. Where are you going, Gandalf? Okay. Okay.
I had to set my cane down. The power was getting so power, you know, just it was like, I was shaking the table.
Wow. So, I was going to tell you that last time you and I spoke about benevolent beings coming into this world and disclosing their presence, and through me, I realized that was all a trick. I'm sorry to tell you, there is no Baba Ji. That's all another. Like a freaking spiritual superhero that doesn't really exist, but they want people to believe it. You know, it's just like Buddha, Muhammad, and all the other ones that they throw out there at us for us to follow or worship. And they were playing on my family history. It started with this woman, this guru from India, who was talking about the Anunnaki. She contacts me. We have a conversation. And that's when I start getting these mental messages about Babaji. And as I looked into it, I'm thinking, oh wow, this must be, it's time, right? We're supposed to have this family thing going on here, right? And it was a complete lie. Just like everything else about En.ki, the Luciferians, that's all they know. They're really good at it, and it makes me feel like a complete idiot for falling for it for a short period of time. I was starting to fall into that trap because they were playing on my ego and my family history, and I really want to believe that there are benevolent extraterrestrials, but that wasn't it. Babaji is not it. Sorry, So I just wanted to clear that up because I know I got a lot of email from people thinking that somehow this was the beginning of something wonderful. And like I said, I wish that was the case. But if it was really happening, if this guy was here or these benevolent beings were really prominent in our lives, do you think any of this crap would be happening that we see almost every day? Now it's actually getting worse.
I've been pondering that, and I'm thinking a lot about that. And it seems to me that this is a duality. So for every action that's created, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So when there's these nasty people out there doing terrible things, there's got to be somebody on the opposite spectrum that is keeping the balance. And I think that there's like a natural order where the universe keeps that in check. So maybe at this level, it's just a boot camp. And like you said, these archetypes that are brought out, whether it be Buddha or Babaji, they're just representations of that carrot at the end of the stick to give somebody, I've got to have hope. I've got to have faith because Babaji says so. So
that's exactly what I told my wife the other day. Yes, that's exactly what it felt like. And they did have me going, but last time I talked to you, so what happened was my uncle, Major Henry Nosek, U.S. Air Force, retired now permanently. He died at 97 years old just a few months ago. After he passed away, his spirit was around for sure. And there was something he couldn't speak towards the end, or he couldn't respond. He could listen, but he couldn't really speak. He could just blink his eyes. It sucks. Growing old is not fun. But the bottom line is this. He and I had a lot of conversations about Yogananda. And he was really pissed off about that whole scene because of the way it had affected his family. He actually wanted to kill some of those people, and he was trained to do it. He could have, but I'm glad he didn't. But the bottom line is he told me there was some really nasty stuff going on there at the ashram in Encinitas, and that he claimed his younger sister had told him, because she was there. She was part of the nunnery, and that there was sexual abuse going on there. So he told the law enforcement. They didn't do anything, and that's when he got furious. I mean, he was already mad, but he was ready to kill. He really was. Fortunately, he helped to get his sister out. My dad stayed in for many years. But people don't know who Yogananda is. I didn't really know either. But after my uncle passed away and I started thinking about what he told me and this whole thing about Babaji, I realized that there was a huge question mark there that I needed to pursue. And ultimately, I found out the truth about, well, first of all, that Babaji is a completely fictional character, and also that Yogananda is also a fictional character. Yes, he existed, but that's not his real name. And his real life is completely different from what we have been told publicly. Much like L. Ron Hubbard, they created this persona around the man as though he was some sort of, again, a superhero.
Even Jesus.
Oh, right. The current version of Jesus, which is constantly morphing. Yes, he's a spiritual superhero that we're supposed to follow to I don't know where, right? And what's funny about it is it's like a freaking Mr. Potato Head. You can just put pieces on there and make whatever you want depending on your own personal needs. So it works perfectly for everybody. I mean, in a way, you can just the problem is none of that stuff is authentic as far as I can tell. And I'm using Yogananda as an example because I grew up with that stuff and I thought I knew who he was. Because my dad was involved since age 6 till, he was introduced to it at age 6. I can't get into all the details because I really don't want to cause too much of a problem here for this show, because I know that there's huge fans of Yogananda around the world because they've read his autobiography, which, by the way, is mostly fiction. It was written by a bunch of people over a period of years, like the Bible.
Well, and just real quick, let me throw something out there on that note.
Go ahead.
Jesus, in the Bible that people have access to, whether it's the King James version or the new the new international version, it doesn't matter. Like, his name's been changed, his birth date's been changed. So how do you know what to believe?
That's the problem. That's for me, I don't believe anything. And that was the problem, what I was trying to tell you before. Last time we spoke, I was actually starting to believe in Babaji and Yogananda. And that was a huge red flag for me, because I don't do that. I purposely do not. I don't belong to any organizations, political, philosophical, religious, none of that stuff, because I know they're all corrupt or designed to confuse us at the very least. All right. But I was starting to believe it because I wanted to believe that. Like I said, so what happened was my uncle died. And in the process, my dog Charles Fox, my mascot, En.ki's mascot, he was very sick and he passed away about a month ago. So in between my uncle and my dog passing away, I was starting to go through some really heavy introspective moments. It was an emotional roller coaster, but it was also a time for me to really take stock of who I am. What am I doing here? What is this all about? So that's when I started to investigate Yogananda. Once I realized that Babaji was just a fiction, then I realized I started to find, this is in the public record, by the way, and this is not my opinion, but Yogananda, like I said, that's not his real name. And like you said, his name was changed. Even after his death, they actually added one letter into his name. They cut the people from the church that were making millions off of this new church, took his name, and this was before Photoshop, they cut and pasted it and actually changed the spelling of his first name. His last name, so it should be Paramhansa Yogananda. Again, it's not his real name, not his birth name, I should say. They changed it to Paramahansa. So they added one letter. The reason they did that was for legal purposes, so that they could take total control of all his property. After the fact, the church wanted to own everything. And so there was a lot of legal battles around everything that, this Yogananda character, the guru. But he was, if you look into his personal life, he was a master hypnotist. There are, in the public record, it is well known that he actually had the ability to hypnotize people. Not everybody, but he actually did this to people, and it was really extreme. I don't mean just a little bit of influence, okay? We're talking about somebody who basically hijacked your mind. And that's part of the dark arts, okay? Only Sith Lords do that kind of crap. I don't want to go down the whole list, okay? Like I said, I know this is going to piss people off. I'm not doing it just to upset people. People are already polarized and pissed off enough as it is, but I think that it's, like I said, I have to be honest with you, not just you, Rex, but with this audience. I think you all have a right to know. Whether you believe it or not is completely up to you. I mean, you can look into it yourself. If you really want the information and you can't find it, just let me know. I'll send you the links through an email. You can look into it yourself. But he was a hypnotist that also practiced necromancy. He was a sexual deviant, a pervert, a predator, even though he preached to his followers that you should be abstinent or control your sexual appetite. He didn't do that. So just saying, there you go. I mean, the other thing that really freaked me out when I found out was that in order to join that group, much like Scientology, where you go to the highest level, you have to sign a 1 billion-year contract in order to be part of the Sea Org. Did you know that?
I had no idea. A 1 billion-year contract. So that's a few lifetimes.
Yeah, right. And the same is true for Yogananda's original church, which split off. They had a schism there, much like Christianity's got all these versions and Islam has all these versions. Yogananda's church, which he absolutely regretted creating later in life, he said This isn't the public record. He said it was like eating your own excrement. That's how much he hated what he did. He said this, man. Not making that part up. But they have a contract that you need to sign or agree to, which is that you will be faithful and follow the teachings of that church for multiple lifetimes. Okay. And this is the hierarchy. It's like a spiritual mafia, as far as I'm concerned. It's like this. The Lord Father, whoever that is, I still don't know who that is. Krishna, Jesus Christ, Babaji, Lahiri Mahasaya, Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda. You have to swear allegiance to those guys in order to be part of that church. No, thanks. I never did. Okay, but just to be completely transparent, even though my dad was a minister, I didn't sign up for that. I'm not part of that church. I'm not part of any church or any political group, just to let you know. I really am independent. So whatever mistakes I make, it's on me, okay? I don't represent any other group. I'm just representing myself, and I know I'm flawed, and I apologize for some of the things I said last time we spoke.
Well, everybody certainly that I've ever met has made a mistake before or said something that they corrected themselves with. I mean, that's the part about learning, and that's the neat thing about the Leak Project. Even as if I come out with a podcast, the information I present in the podcast is wrong, I'll do another podcast right after and say, hey, this is where we made the mistake. These people brought this information to the table, and there's a lot of speculation about what is controlling the system. And the more I think about it, I wouldn't be surprised if it's some type of intelligence that has formed a virtual reality network around us that we're kind of engulfed in. And I'd like to talk about that in a little bit. And one of the things I really want to bring up also is what you showed me on your website, Unicus Magazine, and this 1934 article that was on the front page. It was on the front page of the LA Times, where they discussed these reptilian catacombs underneath Los Angeles. And there was a gentleman that was trying to show this mapping with these X-ray machines and these sonar or something like that. No, not sonar. X-ray sonars for the ocean, but it was no. So it was. But anyway, and then I know it's like, Rex, you sonar, you idiot! It's not sonar, you fool. I knew you were a Jesuit shill. So it's like they're waiting. You mispronounced that. You're a clone, cyborg. I knew it. But anyway, so yeah. And then now some of the stuff that you have shown is incredible. Let me show this real quick. I want to share this with the crowd here. This is a screen share. So let me go ahead and find this. No, not that one. That's going to be for a future podcast. That's super duper top secret right now. It's okay. So here we go. This is it. Okay, let's open this up. I thought I had a screen already opened up, but I guess not. Here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and share this screen right now. Okay, so this dude right here looks almost identical to a reptilian statue that is in Japan of what looks like a reptilian samurai. Got the same ponytail and everything. However, this is in New Mexico. Yeah. This is by Sankawi, New Mexico. And this is available. You can go to the website. I think it's megaliths.org. I'll get the direct link in the video description box. But this has reminded me of what you sent me from Malibu, your neck of the woods. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's a place like that, exactly like what you just showed me. A lot of what appears to be ancient megalithic statues in Peru, up on the very high top of a mountain in a place called Marcahuasi. And it was Daniel Rousseau was the guy who first came to that site and said, oh my God, look at all these statues. And he started documenting it. And there's been quite a few people. They actually go do tours up there now. There's also allegedly a place like that in Mexico somewhere. I have not been able to locate the exact place or pictures of the megalithic statues there, but I'm pretty sure that there's stuff like that all over the world, but it's in very bad disrepair because something happened to our planet 12, 13,000 years ago, whatever, that caused a massive destruction of the culture that was existing at that time.
It's fascinating. And also the Malibu, where you grew up out there in Malibu, there's a lot of interesting energy out there. So
Yeah.
I mean, do you think there's like multiple layers, multiple levels of facilities underground?
Could be. I mean, that's the rumor. Now that thing that Jimmy Church put out in 2014, it wasn't Jimmy's idea. Some people sent this to him, and they've been telling him for a while, "Hey, it's Rex." That's too hot for to wear. So yeah, that particular thing about now we're getting very sinister. I like that look. I've seen that before. The Order of Melchizedek. So anyway, yeah, the so-called underwater UFO base off the coast of Malibu, that is not real either. It's unfortunately that's a Jedi mind trick, or Sith lords are playing games with your mind as usual. That it's not a photograph, and when you tilt the Google Earth, it distorts things. So actually, when you look at it sideways, what you'll see it's just erosion along the cliff, kind of like this. You can see because the way they've warped the whole thing, it actually looks like giant entrance to the underground. It's not. But there's been rumors even before that. The reason people were running with that story is because there was rumors that the Navy had found lava tubes that run all the way from that particular region that you see in Google Earth. Supposedly, they run all the way out into the Mojave, Central California, and probably beyond, according to what people have put out there about the ancient underground ruins in the Grand Canyon.
I think that, the Grand Canyon, that's an interesting story where they talked about the discovery of Egyptian mummies and sarcophaguses, a lot of just ancient texts and incredible finds of antiquity. It'd be neat if we could get out there. When I went out recently through Arizona, and I went through some of the northern parts of, Arizona and then Nevada.
Right.
Well, when I was north of the Grand Canyon, I had an opportunity to meet this gentleman by a place called Tuba City. And there's these footprints of dinosaurs next to humans. And they're estimated to be about 160 million years old. So, how far back does it go? I don't know. But it seems to me like there could be a whole network of underground tunnels and stuff that maybe the military found that could be thousands of years old, and they branched it out. They built upon what they already found.
Yeah. I actually covered that in my second book, Covert Encounters in Washington, D.C., about the ancient underground tunnels under the city. Before they actually built Washington, D.C., the first settlers from Europe that came there, they accidentally found that there was an entire tunnel system down there. So I'm sure, and now we know for a fact, it's already been admitted that there's a modern tunnel system that the military government has built. So yes, I believe they do incorporate the one into the other. I mean, why wouldn't they? That's typical. I mean, look at all the churches, they're built on top of old temples. So it kind of makes sense. But yes, there's tunnel systems and ancient underground cities, or rumors of them, everywhere on the planet. Some places more than others, like South America. It's amazing how many different, especially in Peru and that area, all kinds of underground tunnels and possibly cities. Also Turkey, central Turkey, and the plains there. It's a big, gigantic lava flow that has been hollowed out. There was tens of thousands of people living underground there. And these cities were connected by miles and miles long tunnel systems. And these were multiple layers too. And these things were only discovered again in modern times and recently by accident in the 1960s. Some of them are still unexcavated because it's funny to me. They always say, well, we don't have the funds. Really? You can't find money to excavate something like that, huh? To figure it out? It's amazing.
Well, where do you think the people went? Who do you think built these tunnels, and how long ago? I mean, do you think they knew about these cataclysms that were going on above Earth, so they built into the ground because that's their only way of survival, or do you think that that's where they came from?
There's a lot of different possibilities, but I mean, it would make sense, especially even if you're a space-faring culture. You would be smart enough to know that planets and moons are impacted periodically. So why wouldn't you have some sort of okay, so we know since the days of nuclear attacks, we've built fallout shelters or deep underground military bases or whatever you want to call them. The same is true for incoming. Actually, it's worse. It's the devastation is much worse for a meteorite, asteroid meteorite. Of course, you want to build something underground. If you're an advanced civilization, you'd have to do something like that just as a way of an insurance policy at the very least. So I don't know how old they are. Again, we're not being given all the information. It's pretty obvious that the Smithsonian Institute is involved in the cover-up, specifically at whatever's in the Grand Canyon. It's not just one location. Do you happen to know Jerry Wells?
No.
You never met Jerry? Okay, he's an interesting guy to interview. I'll see if I can give you his information. You can try and reach out to him. But he and his wife, Kathy, have been doing a lot of research on that particular site, which is off limits. Generally speaking, in fact, what they found was that the Army Corps of Engineers went in there, looted the place, and then sealed up the easily accessible entrance is on the top of the mesa. There's another one that's very difficult and dangerous to get to that is down the cliff face. And that's the one that they talk about in the article that was published in the Phoenix Gazette, I believe it was, a long time ago. David Childress actually was the guy that really brought this to people's attention in modern times. But I was really surprised to hear you speaking to Dick Allgaier. Is that his name?
About Mr. Allgaier.
Yeah,
he was.
Yeah. Interesting. So they were doing the remote viewing of that area. And supposedly they found a lot of stuff. Well, other people have actually gone in there and found things too. I mean, they've done some experiments, even though it's not easy to do. There's people that are just adamant about getting in there. But like I said, what Jerry and Kathy found out through their research of actually going on site with some of the native, supposedly the native people still own that place. I kind of doubt that. American government's really good at just taking things away from people and controlling it, but it's under surveillance. Let's put it that way. And it's off limits. You can't just go there. But the original entrance that was up on the mesa that you could just walk into, that's all been covered over by the government. I'm literally covered over, sealed up. And I'm sure that wasn't the only entrance because other people have, like I said, they've done experiments and they found out there's tunnel systems in that whole entire area, just running for miles in every direction. I think they threw some smoke bombs with red dye in it or something, and they found out they could see where it was going. It'd take days, sometimes days later, it would show up in a different location. So there's obviously a huge network, tunnel system, cave system, or a combination of both that it's ancient for sure. Now I know they say it's Egyptian, and maybe there is some connection to that, but Egypt itself seemed to just show up out of nowhere. So I think a lot of people speculate that it was actually part of Atlantis. It was a colony of Atlantis. So I think it'd be a little more appropriate to say that whatever is in the Grand Canyon or Arizona proper is probably Atlantean, if not Lemurian. It's older than just what we think of as the original Egyptian dynasty. Was the tail end or a remnant of or a colony of something like Atlantis.
Now that sounds exciting. I can just imagine that being a secure location, right? So
yeah.
That space, that cave that was all of these artifacts were put in and secured for these cataclysms and natural disasters. They pulled through, then they get discovered, and then they get covered up because it would rewrite history as we know it. And it's probably some very powerful technologies that they discovered. I mean, that's fascinating. And, when I go out in places around Dulce and the Archuleta Mesa and Los Alamos area and some of these places in New Mexico, it's almost as if I can feel this energy, like we're walking on civilizations that are, 100 feet deep, 1,000 feet deep, something that's been there a lot longer than we have. And another thing too is I'm starting to add more credence to the possibility of the entire country having networks of underground tunnels and systems that will connect them to where there could be a place in the middle of the Uintas in Utah, these mountainous regions in the middle of nowhere that people would think there's nothing out there. Well, maybe that area is connected to something in Salt Lake, which is connected to something in Denver, and they could get there in a very short period of time.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. I mean, people underestimate the amount of space underneath our feet. When I was a kid, I got to go to Utah one time with my parents, and we went to a place called Lehman Cave. It's in Utah. You might want to check it out. It's an amazing network. They only show the public a little portion of it. Allegedly, again, it was found by accident. Somebody fell through a hole into it or something like that. But it's like if this was the mountain, right? It actually goes way back like this. And there's places like that all over the planet that most people never go into, probably for good reason. It's dangerous. We don't know what the hell's down there, honestly. And unless you're really prepared, I wouldn't even begin to think about doing something like that. But the rumors persist that there are ancient tunnels and ancient cities like Agartha or Shangri-La, Shambhala, whatever, that these places are all over the planet. So I wouldn't be surprised if they aren't all connected at some level. That would just make sense to me. But why we don't have access, I don't know. I really don't understand that either.
And that's what I want to talk to you about right now. Maybe we can uncover this. You had that just amazing experience that you'll take with you to the next level when you think it was En.ki that you made contact with, and then we talked and you said maybe it was Thoth, but now it sounds to me like you're geared more towards that was En.ki.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, all he said was, "I'm the father," or "I'm your father." But I don't know. And in fact, the letters that the guy sent to me claiming to be En.ki, he was saying that wasn't him. They're trying to screw with my mind. They do this to everybody. It's not just me. So I'm left with just because I say that, just that's what I currently feel is accurate, but I can't prove it. Like so much else in this field, Rex. I mean, come on, where's the evidence? There's supposedly a huge library underneath the Great Pyramid too, in that Sphinx Pyramid complex at Giza. We know for sure there's tunnels there, massive, long tunnels. Are there rooms there? Of course there could be. I mean, some of those rumors are actually really very elaborate. So there may be something to it. I really don't know for sure because I haven't been there, but I kind of feel like it makes sense. Why if they're all around the world, why wouldn't they be under the Giza Plain as well?
Well, and another thing, let's take this a step further, Robert. Whatever it is that's controlling us keeps throwing out these carrots, these magical carrots, these magical savior carrots.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So why? What's their point? They got to give some moral to the troops. They got to give some, is that our opiate in a sense? The opiate to the masses is a specific god or archetype or savior or guru, and that keeps us going. So let's take this to the next step. If there are beings that control this archetype, the matrix that we're in, these archetypes, etc., could they be reptilians? I mean, do you think that's a possibility? Could they be reptilian, a reptilian being that maybe is in these catacombs within the earth, or maybe they fly around in spaceships, or maybe they're right in front of us and they can shapeshift. Maybe they've got technologies that we can't see them. Maybe they're outside of the light spectrum, because we're only seeing 0.01% of the electromagnetic light spectrum anyway, and our brain's filtering out half of that. There's something out there, right?
Yeah.
So what is it? Are they real? They could be, couldn't they? I mean, it sounds crazy to think about with all this information that's presented. I mean, is it crazy?
No, but it makes people feel crazy when they start pursuing, and that's why a lot of people just basically tune out. It's called cognitive dissonance, when you're faced with the implications of something that's just too much. So your brain just basically shuts down. Our brains are designed that way. We have been designed that way. I mean, that's part of the Nag Hammadi revelations, is that through the so-called Gnostics, is that we are actually the creation of the Archon. We're a modern creation of a slave race. And it's not for mining gold. It's something different. This is why all the pedophilia exists. The part of the satanic rituals are basically to absorb pure energy, a purer energy from children on a soul level, and manipulate that so that they can maintain this, whatever this is. We've called it a matrix before. I mean, that I guess is accurate to some extent, in that, I mean, look, a matrix just means a pattern. It's just right. So there's this energy thing that they've done, and they actually need us. Like I said, they don't just feed off of that. They actually need our creativity is something that they lack. So in that regard, yes, they are constantly manipulating and controlling us through these lies. Essentially, they want to keep us confused, and they're doing a really good job at it. One of the things I came across the other day was surprising to me. Never heard this term before. We know what anarchy is, right? It actually means to be against the Archon, believe it or not, because the Archon set up the entire system. It's not like this. It's not like the world's a little corrupt. The whole damn thing is corrupt. From the top to bottom, every different system, whether it be financial, legal, military, political, it's all religious, it's all corrupted by these Archon. But there's another, let me finish. There's an aspect to this that I'd never heard of before. The controlling mechanism of the Archon is called not anarchy, but synarchy. 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 So if you're part of the Archon agenda, the Luciferian system, the satanic Luciferian system, you could be classified as a synarchist. Have you ever heard that term? Me neither. So this is why, as many years as I've over 3 decades now that I've been researching this stuff, it's so perfectly layered, one level on top of the next, a lie on top of a lie, right? Everything is obfuscated so that it's really, really difficult to find the source. And a lot of it is completely irrational, Rex. I mean, you got to look at what's happening right now. I mean, I'm sure you see it. America in general, but the whole world is completely crazy because we're being provoked by these synarchists. They are, and they work behind the scenes. They are very well coordinated. So yes, you could say it's a conspiracy, but it's way more coordinated than just 2 or 3 people. We're talking about a global network that has existed for thousands of years, and they know exactly what they're doing and why. They're just not telling us.
That's another thing. Maybe they're not telling us because if we knew, it would take away their power. It reminds me of the film Cabin in the Woods. And if you've seen that film, throughout 90% of it, you think it's just a horror film, but the end brings it all together. So I'm not going to tell those that haven't seen what it's about. Go watch it. Watch Cabin in the Woods. Give yourself an hour and a half, watch the film, and then that'll put the entire world into perspective. It'll blow your mind. Like I said, the first 90% of it, you're going, okay, wow, this is just like every other horror movie that was made. It's a newer movie, but it's kind of got that 80s, 90s, Jason, Friday the 13th kind of horror mindset at the beginning. But once you get to the end, you're like, holy, this is intense. So that's something that puts it into perspective. Now, let me ask you though. I mean, what's our purpose? We've talked about this before, the matrix and this, this control system, this interweaved setup that we're in. I mean, do you think when we get out, Do you think it's like we're actually leaving this solar system? I mean, do you think some of the stuff that the Saturn matrix, this, going to different planets, maybe as long as it's in this solar system, but this is kind of a quarantine and we just recycle, we go round and round and round and never make it out, or maybe some of us do. And when we do, we're kind of like light beings. So we've got more power and influence.
That's a very good question. And I can't give you what I wish I could give you just the definitive answer, the soundbite that just answers everything, but it isn't like that. It's very convoluted and it's been set up like that. Yes, it's imprisoned for our mind, but it's also to imprison our soul. On some level, they need to keep us here. So when the problem is we addressed on that other show about the Matrix, once we leave our physical, once we disconnect from this so-called physical realm, there's actually other layers of the Matrix, what some people call the astral plane. So there are actually multiple levels of this creation, this particular matrix, this archontic matrix. And people access it all the time, even without physically dying, through remote viewing and necromancy, out-of-body experiences, even near-death experiences. A lot of time people feel like they are contacted by their deceased relatives or angels or possibly even God, whatever that is, for sure, we don't know. But some people have said, a lot of people have said, well, there's something happened to me and I was out of my body. Yeah, you were, but you were not out of the matrix, as far as I know. I mean, I wish it was just that easy. We could just flip a switch and be out. And like I said, I'm an internal optimist, but I got to be a realist as well. What I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing is fake. I know that. But how to get beyond that, I am not 100% sure. Like I said, if I knew, I would tell you, but I don't want to mislead people. I've already done that before accidentally. I've said things that, that were obviously not correct.
Well, yeah, like I said, once again, introduce me to somebody that everything they said is always right 100% of the time. You'll never meet that person because the government will have them in some laboratory. They'll be like, okay, tell us the answer. What are the Russians doing right now? Who's going to win the election? 2020.
Yeah.
I would like to share a personal story that hopefully I won't get too emotional about, because a couple days ago, I heard about my nephew having a near-death experience, and he almost died. He was on death's doorstep. He was in a medically induced coma. He had flesh-eating bacteria. He had holes in his neck. I mean, they were putting all, it was bad, because all from an obsessed tooth that he didn't do what he was supposed to do. I mean, he's supposed to take antibiotics and get rid of it. No, he's out partying with his friends. What do most kids in their early 20s do if they're not, working a job? Anyway. So he was out being a young adult and hanging out with the wrong crowd. He ends up in the hospital, medically induced coma, almost dies. I mean, we thought that we were going to be going to a funeral. Wow. Make a long story short, I find out 2 days ago that he had this dream when he was in this medically induced coma. I think it was a near-death experience where he saw my father-in-law, and my father-in-law passed, a few years ago, and his favorite place to be was in his garden. And he saw my father-in-law in his garden, and then he saw my wife's grandpa in his shop, which was his favorite place to be. And then let's take this to the next level. Yesterday morning, I had a dream where I saw my grandma, and she passed just a couple months ago. Right. And I saw her, and I was so sad because I knew that she had passed, and I gave her a hug, and I made sure to look her in the eyes, and I looked her in the eyes to see if it was really her, and it was really her. And then she ascended, she went up like an angel, you know what I mean? And she was just such an amazing person. I was so close to her. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I've thought before about when you go to the next level and you're getting ready to go through the tunnel, and people said, oh, your ancestors are there to, you hear these near-death experiences where your ancestors are there to take you to the next level. And I've also heard the stories before that a lot of times they're tricksters. They're there to trick you, and they're evil, and they're archons, and they're going to bring you back into this trap, and you're going to have to do it all over again. And I think that both of the cases are true. And I feel that what my nephew saw was my father-in-law in heaven, and his great grandpa in heaven, whatever that level is, wherever that is. I feel like it was out of the matrix, and he was seeing that. So what are your thoughts after me sharing that with you?
I hope you're right.
Me too.
But again, how we can't prove this. We're just expressing our feelings, our observations. Um, I don't want anybody to suffer. It's every day. It's like every day there's something new, crazy new. It's actually the kind of like this Groundhog Day here. They're always doing the same kind of nonsense, you know, the lies and the corruption and the cruelty and stuff. But yeah, I do think there is a benevolent, loving, creative side to all of this. It's just very much suppressed here. And I wish that, you know, part of what's been going on, like I said, with my uncle passing, and my dog passed away after 17 and a half years of best dog I've ever had. It's really hard emotionally to deal with that. I'm still grieving, you know, but it's caused me to reevaluate everything. And recently Bob Dean passed away. I was fortunate to be friends with Bob for many years, but towards the end there, he was suffering, and he was actually suffering from dementia. Most people don't know this, but his wife told me, because I tried to have him on the show and he agreed. And then like I called him up and he was just sitting there in the chair. The phone was ringing. He didn't answer. And anyway, look, it happens. I'm just saying, you know, he was a big proponent of Jesus and the, you know, other realms and stuff. And you know, he believed he was astrally traveling and stuff. And maybe he was, I don't know. But the thing is, my concern is we can't validate these entities, because the tricksters are really good at impersonating people that we either know and love or that we would like to emulate, like, you know, Savior, God, or even God Almighty, whatever that is. I don't know what it is, you know what, but what's bothering me, Rex, is where is God? It's not found in a church or a temple or a mosque, as far as I can tell. I know people would like to go there and find it, but if that was the case, then, you know, why are we still doing all this nonsense? Why are we shooting into, especially lately in America, why are people getting killed in churches and temples? They're being preyed upon by these dark forces, and because they know they're vulnerable, they're unarmed. But I just wonder, I've been wondering a lot lately. So where is God exactly? I know, look, from a fundamental Christian perspective, you say, well, you know, Jesus is your savior. You just follow him and you're going to get to the Father. So far, all the people who claim that, I don't see it in them. I wish it was the case. I guess maybe I've never tried going deep enough into it. There's just something doesn't feel right about organized religion at all. I'm not going to worship anyone or anything. It just doesn't feel right to me. And I really don't believe that leads to salvation or some deeper relationship with our Father, Creator, God. None of that makes sense to me.
Yeah, my condolences on your best friend. You ever wonder sometimes, like with your dog, you're looking at your dog and you're like, could you have been one of my ancestors? Now you're reincarnated as my dog. You know, I mean, it's just so, and there's a lot of beliefs in that. The possibility of your pet dog could have been your great uncle in the past, or your great grandpa, or something like that. So it's really interesting to think about. And that's another thing that I've thought about with this reincarnation thing.
Yeah.
I feel we're much more likely to be reincarnated in our own bloodlines versus somewhere else on another, on the other side of the world, unless for some reason you need that specific learning process. But what are your thoughts on reincarnation?
I understand it.
It's deep.
Yeah, but again, we can't prove any of that. I know people say, oh, circumstantial. Yes, this child said that they did this. And those are rare cases. It seems to me like, just like what happened to me on that mountain in top of Malibu on September 21st, 1985, part of my memory has been blocked. When I was out of body or in the astral plane or whatever, I know I was doing stuff, but there's this wall. It's still there that I am not allowed to see beyond that. It was only because those two women the next day saying what they saw me doing with them in the astral that I have any idea, any clue of what happened. I mean, so The reason I'm telling you that is because between lifetimes, supposedly they can just draw a curtain, the veil, whatever you want to call it. So we don't remember. The thing is, like from a scientific standpoint, they say that matter or energy cannot neither be created or destroyed. So it just exists. So I do feel like because consciousness is really the highest order. Remember I told you there's consciousness, energy, and matter. If energy and matter cannot be destroyed, I'm pretty sure consciousness cannot be destroyed either. However, it can be badly distorted and manipulated and controlled. And that's where we have to be careful. I think that's the only reason I've been working so hard to expose the dark side so that people are not tricked by it and ultimately make decisions or act on decisions that are based on lies.
Well, yeah, man, it's a tough world we're in. It is absolutely a trip, man. It's like Twilight Zone meets The Matrix meets Hellraiser meets hopefully the Jetsons here soon, so we can be in flying cars and just wake up and stand up and go through like that belt machine where it's like, I don't know, what would you call that thing? You just stand on it and it takes you through the shower and he puts on your clothes for you. You're like, okay, let's go. All right, let's get in the flying car. That's pretty cool. But then you get people even lazier than they are now. I mean, geez, people are already like, man, I don't got to do anything. I just get up and push a button. I'm there. So I guess there's got to be some kind of balance. But maybe there'll just be nanobots that'll rewrite your muscles so you won't even have to work out. You're like, hey, dude, I could bench 500 pounds. I injected the new nanobot 5000. And speaking of nanobots, let's talk about first of all, you've got a great radio program. You've got a great website. And I would like you to let people that are listening to this, we've got about 800 people right now watching live. Wow. And how do they watch your radio program or listen to your radio program? How do they watch your shows? And let's talk about the Space Force after this and how that's pretty much admitted now.
Yeah, it's starting to come out of the closet. I'm on KGRA with a lot of really great hosts on Friday and Saturday nights from 10 to midnight Eastern. 7 to 9 Western time. So whatever that works out for you guys. It was a trip. I was in Bali recently on vacation and I actually was listening on my phone to my own show that was broadcasting around the world from New York on the internet. That felt weird. I mean, like it made the world feel like it just was just this little place, in a box you can put in your pocket. Okay, so the website is being upgraded. I'm actually working on something right now called Bob's Blog. I'm really excited about this because it's going to feature my photography, and with just random thoughts about how these moments in time. I mean, it's like capturing lightning in a bottle. It really is. Photography is amazing. You showed me that incredible camera. I heard about it, but I got to check that out now. There's something magical about photography in the sense that you can capture a moment in time and then share it with other people. It's like the only medium that you can really, because one picture, they say, is 1,000 words, right? But just randomly showing people a picture is not the same as, this is one of the cool things about National Geographic. Great photos, but there's also an article that goes with it. They explain to you what's going on behind the scenes. So it really takes you a little bit deeper. And that's something I've been wanting to do for a while. So that's the next phase of my website. I got a lot of cool stuff on there: video, radio, magazines, books. I'm even building a store. It's very small right now, but you know what I mean? It's expanding. So naturally a blog is the next thing, but it's not going to be just random whatever thoughts on the top of my head. There's a purpose to Bob's Blog is actually a photo journal. So I'm excited to put that together. It's a lot of freaking work, but I'm passionate about it. Some of those photographs I've taken over the years are absolutely mind-bendingly beautiful, So, okay, what was it? Oh, yeah. The show, I enjoy doing radio a lot. This is kind of a whole nother level, actually, doing video. People seem to connect more with the video because they can actually see us and kind of get to know us better, or at least think they know us better. But the radio show is better now than it's ever been. I've kind of stopped and started and stopped a few times. And I'm just fortunate that I ended up at KGRA. I was being interviewed on one of the shows there, Task Force Griffin with Commander Cobra. And between the break, I just said, I'm thinking about bringing my show back. And they said, well, come on board. We'll make room for you. And I was like, really? Because I mean, there's great people there, great hosts. And that show, I'm actually one of the top 10 on streaming talk shows. I couldn't believe how quickly my show just shot up there. But again, I'm not doing it for fame or fortune. I'm just doing it because I'm passionate. And one of the topics that you just mentioned, I've always known about it, but I could never validate that there was a secret space force. Now, I know a lot of people call it the space program, secret space program, right? That seems to be the current meme, the narrative. There's a breakaway civilization. Richard Dolan, who's on KGRA, he's kind of the guy that started that. There's some really kooky people out there that are saying crazy things that are unverifiable, including William Tompkins, by the way. A lot of the stuff that he said before he passed away, there's no way to validate that stuff. And it sounds wrong to me. Some parts of it just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I sent you a link to that recent show where I found a couple of the different clips. Actually, so I cited 3 different sources from 3 different time frames. And they're all talking about this Space Force. It's been around for decades, apparently. It really came to prominence back in the 70s. But, if you follow the trail back, supposedly the Nazis were already doing stuff like that in the 20s and 30s. They were already working on a secret space program or a space force. Because it wasn't just like they weren't going out there to explore and pick up rocks off the moon. These guys always had in the back of their mind colonization, exploitation, and militarization of space. And most people don't have a clue about it. Look, I told you privately, one of the things, I was alluding to it before when I was dressed up and talking about Hitler. One of the things that happened regarding the secret space program, when I first started with Unicus magazine, when I met my wife, and we were working together on Unicus, which was in print. It was on across, newsstands across the United States, and even in Britain. We had magazines on the rack there back in the day, right? When people actually used to pick a magazine up and print. One of the guys that was giving us information claimed that he was an extraterrestrial human living here, and that he had access to spacecraft, and his people, he always called it his people, were here. Well, it turned out he was involved with, if not actually was, a Nazi. And I'm really glad that my wife and I didn't get taken, because I think we would end up being just slaves somewhere. Under false pretenses, we agreed. I mean, look, first we agreed, then we disagreed, and there was this whole thing, this negotiation going on. And my family was freaking out because we said we're leaving the planet. Okay, Rex, you never hear people say anything like that, right? You've never heard anybody tell you that, I'm sure.
Actually, the one person that I did hear talk about this was Laura Eisenhower, and she's the great granddaughter of President Eisenhower, and she was supposedly offered an opportunity to do some mission to Mars. So yeah, can you go back and say what you just said? Person. Like, you got invited to go off world? What?
Yeah. It was 19. And we were selected according to this individual who showed us home videos of his people's craft and their world, their home world. He was very careful not to give us too much information. He was actually very paranoid. We thought it was because he had to be secret, but apparently the government already knew about it, because this was the secret. He was part of the secret space program. It's not all military, by the way. A lot of it is private contractors, right? I mean, NASA doesn't build anything. Even the U.S. Air Force, they have to contract with private industry in order to build these things. And the same was true for any other country. Governments don't own industries. So the bottom line is this. When my wife started the magazine, Unicus magazine, the magazine for earthbound extraterrestrials, she had contact with extraterrestrials starting in Venice Beach, and then she was invited to go down to Peru for a few weeks, where she had further contact there, including going to an underground city there at Lake Titicaca. She was taken out of the hotel room and into the underground city, where she met human extraterrestrials, human-looking extraterrestrials in the underground city in Peru. She came back and started Unicus magazine. Naturally,
Dude,
a lot
we
of
got to
people.
get her on the program.
Yeah, well, she works for a Fortune 500 company, and it probably is not a good career move for her to do anything in the public eye. And you got to understand, though, when she was working in advertising and wanted to transition out of that, because people know that is a very manipulative field to be in professionally. Subliminal advertising is real. It's a part of the mind control process that they do to all of us all the time through advertising. It's become a little more in your face now, like Taco Bell being part of the Illuminati. It's like, oh, guess what? Isn't this funny? So she wanted to transition out of there, out of being part of that, way to manipulate people into buying cigarettes and soda pop and booze. And ultimately, that's why she offered her services up to whoever was out there. She wasn't thinking extraterrestrials. She prayed to God on her birthday. I think it was just her 30th birthday. She just said, I want to do something with my creativity, with my talent, other than, trick people into doing things that are bad for them. And that's when shortly after sending out that thought, she got back a holographic, projection at 3:30 in the morning, or whatever it was, 3 o'clock in the morning. She sees this projection over her of all these people participating in a magazine that would become more than a magazine, and there was a name flashed there and all these people, and her thought was, I don't know anything about publishing a magazine. And the message came back to her was, just do what start it, and the people will come. Like Field of Dreams, right? You build it and they'll come. It was like that. So she just started the first issue of the magazine. It was very simple. The white album, we call it. So just a white cover, says Unicus. But that's how we met. She had just come back from Peru. She was speaking at a UFO conference, and we met, and we've been together ever since. So that was over 28 years ago. But I helped her. I became the editor of Unicus magazine, and we started doing a lot of publicity naturally, because you need that in a book or a magazine, anything, right? So we were going on things like Montel Williams. We did a show a couple times called The Other Side. It was on Channel 4, NBC. We did a pistachio nut commercial together, she and I, because the best nuts are found in California, So we were doing whatever we could to get it out there. Sometimes it was funny. But anyway, that's how this guy contacted us, because we were putting out this particular narrative that there's good extraterrestrials here, and we're going to promote it through the magazine. It's kind of hard to find legitimate people, though, that actually fit that criteria. That's how I met Jerry Wills, actually, was in NBC Studios, Burbank, California.
Were you on the Mari show after or before?
Say again?
Were you on the Mari show after or before?
Mari? What is that?
Or Maurice Williams?
Oh, Maurice Williams. Wait a minute. You lost me there. Who are you talking about? Maurice Williams?
That talk show that you were on.
Okay. Montel Williams.
Montel Williams. Yeah,
you lost me there. Montel Williams. Yeah, that was in New York. Yeah, that guy was weird. He was originally trained to be by the Office of Naval Intelligence, and he ended up, yes, Montel Williams. Look it up. That's
a perfect place to put Navy intel.
Yeah, because well, except it's coming out of New York, but same difference. The bottom line is the show we went on, George Knapp was there, Sean Morton was there, we were there, and he was showing a clip where he had gone to Area 51, and he said, there's nothing going on. He says, there's nothing going on out there. You shouldn't bother these guys. Just let them do their job. Whatever they're doing, it was propaganda from the government going through Montel Williams. So, the bottom line is, my wife doesn't want any more publicity right now. She doesn't need it. And she's busy working. So that's fine, but Unicus has grown. Her vision of it being, something more than a magazine actually did come true through me, because I continued it as a website and ultimately a radio show, books, 2 books, so far. There's more coming. Sorry it's taken so long, but it's really expanded, but it still carries over this theme, because that was one of the commonalities that my wife and I share, is that we've both had contact with extraterrestrials, and yet we still don't know for sure who they are. We really, really don't know, because they're being very tricky, I guess they're just not completely transparent. This thing about disclosure, I'd like it to happen. Oh, but by the way, this thing about the Academy to the Stars, everybody's a CIA operative except for, what's his name? Mr. Blink 182. I'm drawing a blank on the guy, the front guy for the group, the punk rock musician. Anyway, everybody else is screaming at me now. They know who it is. I forget this guy's name.
I'm sure it'll show up in the live chat in a minute.
Yeah, it's fine. You know what I'm talking about. The Academy to the Stars is another front group for, like I said before, the synarchists. It is this. Why do I know this? Well, because James Hurtak is on the team. Not only is everybody retired CIA, but the main guy who's really leading the group, the so-called scientist, is James Hurtak. Look him up, Hurtak. Look up James Hurtak and the Nine, or the Council of Nine, and you'll understand that the synarchists are actually an extension of the Luciferian agenda. They are basically the archons, hands, and they're here to work for the archon. Everybody that's promoting this so-called New Age stuff doesn't realize where it's coming from and how manipulative it really is. So this latest thing, Academy to the Stars, is Tom DeLonge. That's okay. Message received. Tom DeLonge. I don't know who the guy is really. I don't care if he's the greatest musician ever. That's not the point. He put this out there like it was going to be something benign, and it's not. It's further manipulation, and it didn't really manifest the way that he claimed it was going to be, the most wonderful, groundbreaking media blitz, whatever. It ended up in the New York Times briefly, but that was all sanctioned by the Pentagon. The media is totally controlled, right? Even the alternative media is suspect. A lot of the stuff that we discuss, a lot of these characters, they're using fake names. They are a lot. Some of these people out there, the so-called great researchers, are completely fake, in my opinion, using fake names. I mean, I know I've got a costume on. I tell you that. Everybody knows I'm just goofing around. But if I was out there doing this every day under a fake name, that would be completely different. If I was selling books under a fake name, giving myself fake credentials and stuff, that's what some of these guys are doing, basically to muddy the waters, to confuse us, to control us.
You were talking about the archons and how anarchy is against the archons. Well, the original definition of archons is rulers and controllers. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And, so it's like, where do we go? What do we do? Do we just keep playing this out? Is this going to be the same forever? Or when the stars alignments change and the planets alignments change, does that mean we go with it? I mean, is it a microcosm to the macrocosm? What do you think the next 5 to 10 years is going to bring for us? Even the next 6 months. Let's go over the next 6 months. What do you see on the horizon with all the, let's talk about politics without talking about politics. I don't like the politics. Do you think that there's going to be some some changes and possibly wars, anything on the grand scale, or just these proxy wars? And
yeah. Let's tie this back to let's go back into Space Force now, because this is why we even brought it up to begin with. People have no idea. Space Force already exists, but they're claiming under President Trump that it's something new and that's something he created or thought up. It's not. It's been around for a long time. One of the sources I found was giving a testimony to publicly. It wasn't official, but it was a former military officer speaking in front of a panel of people, saying that he remembered back in 2001, right before 9/11, that George Bush, at the time, President George H.W. Bush, was saying that that we had a Space Force that was ready to be launched or something like that. I forget the exact quote, but you can link to that particular episode on unicusmagazine.com. Just click Space Force Report, and you'll get all the information. I'm kind of blanking out on some of the details, but the bottom line is this: that was 2001. Recently, Alex Jones brought it up because it's been in the news. I mean, I also have a lot of links to articles in the news. It's quite astonishing how much information is really out there that most people aren't paying attention to. Why? Because fake bombs, mass shootings, the Kavanaugh hearings. I mean, these kind of things are constantly distracting us and dividing us by design by these archons, Luciferians, Satanists, whatever you want to call them, masters of the Matrix. Oh, I kind of like that. That's the name, good name for a band.
Yeah, Masters of the Matrix. Robert Stanley.
Yeah, no.
Singer and guitarist.
Yeah.
Going on tour. Are you going to be at LeakCon? Are you coming to LeakCon?
I got the invitation today. I'm not, I'm still in Hong Kong, so that's kind of a long flight. I'd like to go. We'll see. Let's just see what happens. But thank you. Yes, I'll think about it. And here was the upside of Charlie's passing. He's no longer suffering, because the last few months were bad. The last few weeks were horrible. The last few days were just sucks. It really sucks to see someone you love suffering, right? So I'm glad that he's not suffering anymore physically. I also was the one caring for him. I've got my wife and son live here with me, but I just, I work at home. They've got things to do. So I volunteered. I was just like, you guys want to go on vacation? Go for it. I am not leaving our dog with a stranger. It's too stressful. I know it's too stressful for the dog. Why would I do that? Until he passed away. And that's why I went to Bali a couple weeks ago. And now I'm free to travel around the world again. I've been to 59 countries in 59 years so far. And I know it's going to keep going from there. We'll see what happens. Okay. Well, anyway, so the whole thing about Space Force came up again. And here's what you need to know. In summary, it is going to supersede, it actually already does covertly, but it supersedes all the other branches of the military. It has to, because it is the high ground. Militarily, that is strategically the most coveted place in any battlefield. You want to have the high ground. Whoever controls the high ground typically wins or dominates. And that's been the stated goal now officially is the United States of America needs to dominate space into the future. So the official narrative has gone from us being exploring space through a manned mission to now we need to dominate space through military manned mission. This is not going to be all remotely done. It has to include people officially going off world. They've already done it unofficially, I'm sure. And that's what I was trying to tell you before about this character that we met back in 1990, 1991 through that little time frame. We were being shown things that indicated that there were people going on and off the planet all the time. And it was at that time, shortly after meeting that character, that I actually saw it happen with my own eyes. I told you off air, I've had multiple close encounters with UFOs, but that at that particular time, when we met this guy, I was living in Santa Monica, and he told me that's where he met his mentor that brought him into the secret space program. Now, the guy grew up in a wealthy family. He looks normally, right, human, but at some point he was told that he was an extraterrestrial. That's the way it was described to us. I don't think any of that's true, you know? And this is the problem. He may have believed that. See, we get a lot of people like, I really love Bob Dean, but I think a lot of the stuff he said was misinformation. Look, he believed it. I'm sure he did, but he'd been told lies that he then passed on to us. And I'll give you an example. He said he read this above top secret report when he was working with NATO in Belgium at the headquarters there, Supreme Headquarters Command, whatever, shock. And he was given this above top secret report to read, which doesn't make any sense. Why? I mean, yes, he must have had a clearance, but what was the purpose of that? Because they need to know, NATO needs to know that there's a potential threat. But it turned out that it wasn't a threat. According to this assessment that he read, the NATO assessment that they paid a lot of money for, hired all these professionals to come up with an assessment. Do UFOs and extraterrestrials present a threat to the world? The answer was no, but one of the groups is human, just like you or I. They could be anywhere. And he said that was the group that actually concerned the governments that were part of NATO. That's the group that of so-called extraterrestrials that actually concerned NATO the most, even though they supposedly weren't a threat. The fact that they could be anywhere, including the Pentagon or NATO or even the White House, because they look just like us. Well, damn it, they probably are us. Some of us that have gone off-world, that are part of the secret space program, or more importantly, the more accurate term is Space Force. The U.S. Space Force is real. It's not something that's coming. It's already existed for decades. It's just that so they're going to have to come up with some justification to tell us about this at some point. And I do think this is one of the reasons that you have so much infighting between the so-called, I call them despicables versus the deplorables. The left-right thing, that it's designed to divide us, right? And distract us from what's really going on literally over our heads. There's another, I mean, you got to think this through. Who's in control of the U.S. Space Command in space? Is it the politicians, or is it something completely different? Is it a military tribunal? We don't know because they're not telling us. But here's what you got to understand. We are now moving into militarization of space, even though the UN says, the treaty says we shouldn't have any weapons out there. Well, we've already had weapons out there for a long time. We violated the treaty. U.S. is famous for violating treaties, so that doesn't surprise me at all, right? But the level of violation is what we're talking about here now. We are going to move out, like I said, to exploit. We're no longer explorers. Just like the pioneers that went across the West, they weren't exploring the West. They were there to exploit the West. And if anybody or anything got in their way, they blew it up. You know? Just ask the Native Americans. They just bulldoze everything in the way to get to their what they call manifest destiny. That's the buzzword. That's the catchphrase. That's the slogan. The U.S. has the right to manifest their own destiny. It's their God-given right to just go out and do basically whatever the hell they want. And that's what we're doing. We've been doing it secretly for I don't know how many years for sure, but decades. Just put it that way. It's not coming. It's already existing. So, like I said, it was this one source. Talking about 2001. There was another source I cited back in this, he actually came forward in the 90s. He was a Washington, D.C. lawyer, and he was talking about secret space program then. He didn't call it that. He just said that there was a war going on. There was a secret war going on in space between the Soviet Union and the Americans. And it was very detailed. And he claimed he was getting that information as a Washington, D.C. lawyer. He was connected with a lot of people in the military intelligence establishment, and they were giving him this information, allegedly. Most people don't know about this guy, but I read about it. I heard his audio tapes back in the 90s, and It was very shocking. I believed it was possible then, but I'm convinced. Now I'm convinced because we have multiple sources that you kind of all tied it together, that there's this thing. Now, even the regular mainstream media, and you can check this out in the links in my website at unicusmagazine.com. Scroll down to the very last link. No, almost the last one. Anyway, it just says they break it down. They show you Space Force is actually 4 different agencies combined in one that supersede all the other military agencies. So they are the highest level of military control. And they're not even on the planet. So here's the thing. You got to understand, once you've been off-world long enough, certain other aspects kick in. Like when you travel around this planet, you got to have permission. You got to have a passport, visas, stuff like that. Unless you're just an illegal immigrant from freaking Guatemala or Honduras, apparently those guys can go wherever they want. I'm not on board with that kind of nonsense. That this militarization of migration is crazy. Breaking down borders is not a good idea. Not like that. Not that way. Okay. But they're weaponizing people, destroying whole cultures, nations. That destabilization thing, it works pretty good to a point if you really want to take control, but it always leaves a mess behind, always does, permanent mess. And it's the dark side. It's just a work of the dark side. So if you think about how screwed up this planet is on every level, how corrupt it is, Luciferian, satanic, archonic, whatever you want to call it, and then you project that into outer space, do you think somehow it magically cleans itself up once you leave this world? Or does, like the old saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts? Absolutely. Now, I am an optimist, but again, I'm also a realist. So that's a good look for you, Rex. That's very ominous.
Thank you.
You mean to tell me there's no Sith Lords involved in the U.S. Space Force? The secret space program is all benevolent? I know a lot of people want to believe that because America is, the greatest country on earth and we only fight for democracy, and even though we're a republic, and none of that makes sense to me. That's, again, I didn't really agree with a lot of what William Tompkins was saying, that somehow we're the good guys no matter what. We got clean hands no matter what we do. I don't believe it for a minute. It doesn't work like that. I mean, show me the freaking proof. And maybe you can change my mind. But at this point, I'm really, really concerned about the fact that there's not only weapons in space, but there are warriors in space. And, okay, who you got there? Oh, my God. Jesus, Rex. Is that your mascot, huh? That's like a Baphomet kind of thing.
Well, okay, so a couple days ago, I decided to put on the Grateful Dead shirt, and I just got this Grateful Dead shirt, and the same day I put on the Grateful Dead shirt, I get a package in the mail that actually got shipped to Texas, and I had it shipped from Texas to here, so I didn't know what it was. And I opened the box, and there's a couple of them. There's like 2 of these dudes. So I was quite excited. So I've got Grateful Fred. And I haven't came up with a name for the other one yet. But, people get freaked out. They see horns on a skull, and the first thing they think is it's evil. And, this dude's pretty cool. He's hanging out. He's actually there was a spider that, was in the house earlier, and a lot of people would just squash the spider. Well, he actually said, hey, let the spider out. So I let the spider out, and yeah, so it's it's not bad. It's good, man. He actually want to go to church. Well, here you go. He'll pay his tithings and spooky stuff. So anyway, I divagate. I apologize. Grateful Fred and Grateful Fred and aliens. I didn't know about your wife's experience though. I want to be. I'll do my best to not be serious, but be from serious for a moment. That experience that your wife had and that you've had, you've shared that with me before, but that's incredible, man. So she actually was in an underground city in another country and had an opportunity to be a part of a program and go off world? And did they say like where? I mean, can we go into details on this? I mean, this is huge, man. This is a big story.
Well, the city is well known under Lake Titicaca by the local people. They don't get to go there. They just see the UFOs going in the water or under the ground and popping in and out of that area. They've always seen this, so they just figure it's normal. Again, they probably consider them to be gods, even though I doubt that's an accurate term. I mean, typically I call them goddamn liars, because these so-called, well, I mean, typically that's what happens. Like, look, I told you what happened to me. I was completely lied to. And then I passed on the lie. See, and this is what I'm saying about even Bob Dean. Very intelligent man, very loving guy. He was very sincere, but that's why they selected him, in my opinion. And I interviewed him for our magazine, Unicus magazine, in print. And I republished that in my first book, our interview. He loved that interview. I thought it was great too, but he wasn't telling, he wasn't telling us the whole story. He doesn't know. He's not allowed to know. He was just allowed to know enough to pass on this misinformation or a distortion of what's really happening. So he was serving a purpose, basically. And that's one of the reasons why he was able to talk about above top secret stuff, right? Because it was not exactly accurate. For my wife, I do believe she was being manipulated as well, just like everybody else. They wanted us to promote the so-called benevolent extraterrestrials. Good luck trying to find one of them. Supposedly Jerry Wills is one of them. He claimed that he was part of a program where a bunch of them were brought here as children or infants or whatever to become part of society to supposedly make this a better planet. Unfortunately, whatever that was, it isn't working as far as I can tell. Maybe I'm not looking at the right news sites or something, but basically this world's actually getting worse. In fact, his contacts, whoever they were, possibly from Pleiades. Well, he claimed he was from originally from. Damn it! It'll come to me when I'm not thinking of it. Ganymede.
You're getting 5G right now. There's a van right out of your.
Not Ganymede. Hold on. Anyway, it's on my website somewhere. Just Google Jerry Wills, ET. It was one of those planets that supposedly he was brought here from there. I don't know. But okay. So after she came back and started the magazine, that's when we were contacted by somebody. That was the first guy. It was a human who claimed to be an extraterrestrial but he never said where. But based on what I know about the Germans, I would have to say it has to be somewhere in Aldebaran. I'm just guessing, but that's what the German psychics and military intelligence and secret societies, that's what they claim. Their connection to extraterrestrials was Aldebaran. According to Wes Penray, that's where En.ki's base of operations there, Sirius. So you have like Aldebaran and Taurus, the Pleiades, and then above it, Pleiades and Sirius, that whole little triangular area. Orion is something separate. It's nearby, but it's, allegedly that's something separate, even though En.ki supposedly came from there. Again, we can't really validate any of that stuff. I would have liked to met some benevolent extraterrestrials and been able to promote them. I mean, but even then, Rex, what I told you, one of my biggest complaints here, and it's just obvious, it's the freaking elephant in the room nobody wants to talk about, is there are no extraterrestrials that are coming forward to give an interview. It hasn't happened, not officially. Not even unofficially. I mean, it's just all you get is channeled material. Yeah, supposedly Jerry Wills is, but I mean, there's no evidence. There's no absolute proof of that. And what I'm talking about, the classical scenario, like that night, how I started my first book was because about UFOs in Washington, D.C., because they swarmed over the Capitol. One of them landed on the freaking roof. We've got the pictures. But did they stop and actually have a press conference? Did they talk to anybody officially? No. Why not? What the hell are they doing here, Rex? Why do they keep showing up, but they don't talk to us ever officially or even unofficially? Like this would be considered on an unofficial news source, right? How hard would it be for them with their advanced technology to just sit down and talk to you like this? What is the freaking problem here with them? Not us. We're not that stupid.
They're teasing us. Yeah. It also reminds me of Childhood's End, the TV series. Did you see that?
No,
Did you see the TV
you're
series?
the second person to bring that up this week. Yeah, a Hollywood producer asked me about if I knew. Yes, I know exactly.
What a weird synchronicity. Well, the reason I brought that up is because that series projects these ETs that, far superior with technology and advancements, etc. They come down to Earth. They look like devils. They do. Right. They look like what you would think of as a Hollywood devil with the horns and everything else, but they're friendly. And they come to Earth and they get rid of all the pain and all the suffering and all disease, and everybody gets free energy and everybody's happy. But guess what? Not long after they save everybody, they blow the planet up. They blow the planet up. Like what? So and then their home planet looks like hell in the series. So I'm thinking, but here's where I'm going with this. There's this one scene where an ET, one of these ETs makes contact with a human being and he gets shot and he almost dies.
Yeah.
So they're fragile. They're worried about us just as much as we're worried about them. If they show themselves, what if you've got Crazy Billy over there?
Yeah.
Hey, look, I got one. He's next to Bigfoot. Let's get him.
Yeah. And people legitimately have shot weapons at UFOs, maybe even extraterrestrials, according to the public record. Now, there was one of the ladies that I interviewed for Unicus magazine was actually a friend of my sister. And she lived in Malibu. That's where they met, became friends. When I told her what I was doing with the magazine, she said, "Oh, yeah, I know all about that." And I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Well, I was abducted." And I said, "No, I don't. I don't remember you ever mentioning that." And she says, "Well, yeah, it happened down in Colombia." She says, "My dad was living down there. I went down to visit him." And so she described how, they were just, she said, one minute I was in the back of the car, next minute I was just sucked up into the UFO somehow. And she said, I didn't remember any of that until years later. She said, I was back in Malibu and I was having a lucid dream. She said, in a lucid dream, she said, I woke up in my bed, in my bedroom in Malibu at the house. And she said, but for some reason she could see out the window, or somehow she went up on the roof or something. She said she could see there was UFOs over the house in her dream. And she said that when she woke up, she was so scared. She says, holy crap, they're back. She thought they were going to abduct her again. It was shortly after that she started having a recall of what had happened in Colombia. And it's pretty benign, at least the way she described so I'm not sure exactly why she was, and this is going to address what you're saying exactly. That's why I'm bringing it up. Because they're supposedly afraid of us. We're so primitive and violent, etc. When she was taken on board, she was shown different people. One of them was a reptilian, but it was not threatening at all. She said there was a guy on board that had blue skin, dark hair, kind of like a bowl cut. There's a reptilian. There was other people, humans. And she said they were doing some, not exactly experiments, but they were doing some things showing her the effect of color on humans on multiple levels and some other things. And then she said, she asked them that question, why don't you guys just land and get out and say hi? They said, because, we'd be shot at by somebody. Somebody would freak out and supposedly shoot them and we can be harmed that was their excuse, just like you just said, to her. But here's the weird part. Here's where it gets really the suspicious aspect of all this. When they were done having this dialogue with her and showing her around and doing whatever they were doing with her on board the craft, they hypnotized her. They gave her a suggestion that you will remember this event, but it will be as common as waking up in the morning and putting your shoes on. Now, that's a very interesting way of tricking a child or a young person into block. You put a mental block in their consciousness. It's not the brain. It's some other energetic thing that they were doing to her. So that even when she did remember it, she didn't tell anybody. She didn't tell anybody until years later when I, showed her a copy of the magazine. And she just blurted it out. And I said, well, God, can I include that? She's like, yeah, you could write about it, but just don't use my name. Don't use my real name. So there is this level of control, Rex, that not only are they not talking to us directly in a public forum like this, the people that they've privately spoken to, they're manipulating them so that they don't divulge too much information about whoever these people are. And it's a freaking menagerie. It is kind of like Star Trek or Star Wars in that it's not monolithic. It's not all humans, although humans are part of it. Look, we can handle this, Rex. It's just they can't handle us knowing. That's my ultimate conclusion about all of this. They cannot handle us knowing. Now, I did a poll. For 6 months on my website at unicusmagazine.com, I had a poll up, and I asked 7 different questions about having, how would you feel about having open contact with benevolent extraterrestrials? 7 questions I asked. And people had there was 3 responses that you could choose from. The majority of the people overwhelmingly said, and I forget, it was I don't know, a few thousand people responded before I took this thing down. But all the results, I still have it up there. The majority of the people, the public, said, we want to have contact with benevolent extraterrestrials. So that means and I think this was legitimate, I didn't change anything. I believe that the majority of the people on this planet want to have contact, but the elite that run the planet do not want us to have contact, and that is being reinforced by the extraterrestrials themselves. They do not, because they could bypass this whole mechanism entirely, Rex, if they wanted to. Like I said, they could have done this a long time ago. They obviously don't want to have a direct dialogue with us, or they would have done it already. So this takes us back to what you said before. What do we see coming? Well, they're obviously making things much worse. Right now, there's 3 times more debt than there is equity on the planet. I'm not an economist, naturally, but any fool can see that this is unsustainable. This current system has got to collapse in order to rebuild the new world order. They've been talking about doing this, but they will also, this new world order, according to their particular philosophy, is order from chaos. It's not just a Masonic thing, okay? The Masons are just one branch of a very large group of archontic or Luciferian elitists. They're basically just puppets. I call them pawns of the Archon. All these different secret societies, they say, oh, we'll make you rich and powerful and whatever, right? But in fact, they're all puppets. They're all prisoners here too. They just have a little more privilege and so-called power, but they're stuck here too. So,
let me say something on that note real quick. It's interesting when you hear these stories about Freemasons, and I'm not a Freemason. I'm not a part of any mystery school. The only secret society I'm a part of is called Leak Project, and it's not very secret. So there's very good people out there that are Freemasons. There's very intelligent people out there that are Freemasons. So when you hear these stories about how the Freemasons are secretly designing a new world order, that's like saying, there's good and bad apples in virtually every religion, virtually every corporation or business or archetype or mindset or whatever. It seems like you've got both spectrums. So you could say that about almost anybody in a sense, because they're a part of something. So, and I know you're agreeing with me on this in the sense that people use that term. That's why I think you said it like that, because people will use these terms. Oh, well, that person's a Freemason. Oh, well, that person's a Rosicrucian, or that person's a Mormon. Oh, that person's a Baptist. Oh, it doesn't matter. It's what are you doing as a person? Because they're an individual also. They're just a part of a society that, they've got certain secrets and mysteries and roundtables. And it is interesting that almost every president has been a Freemason. Yes, I get it. There's no conspiracy there. Oh, no. Back to you. No, none at all.
Well, but my point was that they're all connected. The Freemasons don't stand alone, or the Rosicrucians. They're all interrelated. They've all been infiltrated. Again, I think the better term is the one that I only came across 2 days ago, and which kind of blew my mind. I I read every day. I'm researching this stuff, talking to people like yourself all the time. Synarchy. Who are the synarchists among us? Well, they're covert. They have to be by the very definition. Synarchy means to do something to work behind the scenes to control everything. Everything. Okay. That means everybody on this planet. And let's take it one step further. They're not satisfied with just this world. They want to go take it to the next level, which they've already done secretly, again, that's a typical definition of synarchy. It's done in secret. It's the opposite of anarchy. It's the prevention of anarchy. Anarchy can't break out as long as you have synarchy in control, as it is systemic to this world, and now even beyond this world. So all the colonies that they either already exist or will be built in the very near future, and by corporations, Rex, and they will be guarded by the military. Laws will be enforced by the military off-world. Oh yeah, they'll have courts, but I mean, what you got to have, like, okay, again, let's go back to the pioneers coming across the they called it frontier justice. A lot of times, people would just, take the law into their own hands, but ultimately there had to be sheriffs and judges and whatnot. But you always had the military there, the cavalry or whatever. The military was always a part of that push west across the plains and eventually across the Pacific. So we've already done it. It's already gone out there secretly, but now it's going to become official. And at some point in the near future, I think it's coming very rapidly, about the time the 2020 elections come along, probably they're going to whip out. This one came up for the 2016 election. The Democrats actually were talking behind the scenes about creating a false flag with extraterrestrial, like a Project Bluebeam kind of thing. They were talking about flipping the switch on that in order to really upend everything. I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but it could be very soon, or it's going to come at a time that's very convenient, much like this crazy bomber, the MAGA bomber, came along to just right around the midterms, would bring this guy out.
Yeah, let's don't get into that too much here on this platform.
But the point is, they have people like this. These are like cards in a deck. They can just toss this stuff out. Reagan was talking about this years ago, that what would unite all of mankind was a common threat from off-world. And at some point, when they're ready to, when it's most advantageous for the elite, they are going to flip a switch and say, oh, we found a threat. And now all the different space force and military of our planet is going to be focused into defending our planet against the common enemy. That'll be the catalyst that actually, instead of having us divided and distracted on that, we're all going to have a common goal, common enemy. That's a real possibility. I hope it doesn't happen, Rex, because I'll be the first one to be probably censored on the internet for saying this is bullshit. They planned it for a long time, and these are false flags in space. How hard is it to stage something like that? What are you going to have CNN running around interviewing guys and embedded in the freaking Space Force? Give me a break.
Well, it would make sense to me if I'm looking at it from a forecasting standpoint and a psychological standpoint with the masses, is to bring things out incrementally. And what would you bring out before you said, hey, there's extraterrestrials, whether they're doing it as a hoax to bring everybody into the new world order or to cause some type of chaos. So that would be, they've been talking about that for years. And also, it would be ideal because then, the Secret Space Force is there. So now we've got something to protect us. We're going to have to keep funding the Secret Space Force. And like you said, the politics, that we need to, if we talk about politics, we need to do it without talking about politics. It's like that's the way the world is now, unless you're one of the big news channels that is linked with the controlling the narrative. So yeah, it is really bizarre, Robert. well, it doesn't make sense unless it does make sense. And it's horrible what happened. It's horrible what happened.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that it happened. I just, like you said, why did it happen now? Is it really just because, and let's don't get into it anymore. Let's stay out of it. We just can't talk about that kind of stuff here. But I'm sure you can on the radio. You can talk about that kind of stuff on the radio. And,
so far.
And also, I was going to say something that was really important about the Space Force. Okay, so you got the Space Force, and then you come out later and you say that there is we're at a threat. There's a threat from another planet. When Reagan made the statement, when they were working on the Star Wars program that disappeared for 30 years, it's out there, folks. He said, "Hey, what if there was a faction that an off-world faction that caused a threat? Then we would all unite together." And the New World Order thing, there's always a New World Order. It's like, this is the New World Order. It's like, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's more totalitarian. It's more control. It's more under their thumb. And Robert, I think, to answer your question, we are in a simulation. And the simulation that we're in has certain parameters. And this universe that we're looking at that has all these other planets, they're there, but it's the simulation. It's this holographic simulation. Unless when people get to a certain level, they just destroy themselves. Otherwise, we'd be talking to ETs all over the place. It wouldn't just be these few factions. They're controlling us. They're telling us what to do, and they're controlling the narrative for their game, their system. And if we don't comply, then they find a way to get us to comply. And then when you break out of the system, like what we're doing, we're inside the Borg, but we're outside the hive mind. We're in the system, we're also out of it. So I think that it's great. And you brought up this threat, and I also want to mention the Illuminati playing cards. I've done some podcasts on this. I've got some good news, folks. I have the entire set of Illuminati playing cards coming in, so we can look at all these cards that were made in the 80s that were based on a book. No, they were made in the 90s from a book in the late 70s or early 80s based upon that, around that. And we're going to be able to take these cards and say, yep, they did that. Yep, they did that. Yep, that was last year. Yep, that was 5 years ago, 10 years after the cards came out. So it's crazy, man.
Well, actually, no, that makes perfect sense. All so-called entertainment is basically programming or conditioning us, or predictive programming. Like Star Wars, they're basically telling us our future. Star Trek, same thing. Androids are going to be part of the whole thing, space travel, etc. But we're still going to be fighting wars. So be prepared for that, is what they're telling us. Also, that in Star Wars, they talked about destroying the Republic and creating a galactic empire. Wes Penry talks about this in his papers, that essentially that is the future as we move off world. Now, remember I told you that there's 3 times more debt. It's approximately $250 trillion worth of debt. And yet the global economy still somehow is functioning. When they're ready to flip the switch, though, and this thing collapses, what they're going to reconstitute it with is something like a Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, but it'll be backed by gold or something like that. Because what's going to happen as we start exploiting resources in space, and I actually worked on reports for Honda Research and Development when I worked there for a number of years, they knew that they were going to play a role. And that's why I was writing these reports for upper management. Not only energy production, but also the Honda robot. I don't know if you've ever seen Asmo.
Oh,
it's actually developed. It's come a long way since I worked there in 1995 is when I started. Worked there about 8 years. But anyway, it's becoming more advanced. And so the bottom line is that they're going to be able to, these corporations are going to go out there and literally make trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars off of exploiting resources in space, like, let's just say, precious metals. It's going to completely upend the gold market, silver, whatever, for a while. But it will be able to balance out the debt. 250 trillion sounds like a lot, but just mining a few asteroids, you can just balance that out entirely. The price of gold will change too, because gold will no longer, it's not going to be a rare commodity like it is now, but it will back it. They have to use something to back the digital currency. Digital currency is essential because it's not a nationalized fiat currency. And more importantly, it's transferable electronically at a distance. So when you have colonies on the moon and Mars and God knows where else they're going to be, you can just hit the button and and send credit digitally, just transfer it out. I mean, they're already kind of doing it now, but they're going to revamp the system is what I'm trying to say. They're going to upgrade it in the very near future. And none of this is really for our benefit, as far as I can tell. Yes, it's a simulation, but within the simulation, there's something going on here. They need us to go to another level for whatever reason. Now, Wes Penray claims there's an ongoing war. Other people have said this too. I came across a really interesting book about this by Michael Tessarian, not his real name, but it's an interesting book nonetheless, okay? And he was talking about how, some of the fallen ones have actually been imprisoned here. At least that's what he claimed from his sources. I don't know. It may be. It may be that they have been imprisoned here for some time. And the analogy is, not the greatest, but you know how the British, when they ruled the world for a while, the British Empire, they took their least desirable criminal elements and placed them in a place called Australia. Okay, they didn't ask the native people, hey, do you mind if we put our criminals here in your little continent? Nope, they just put them there in these camps, and eventually they let them out. So it's possible the same thing happened on this world in this solar system. There you go.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say I've heard that theory before.
You were on mute. That's all.
Yeah, I've heard that theory before. This is the boot camp planet. This is the rogue planet. The rebels came here, and then if you think about it, that would correlate with the story of Lucifer, the rebel, the fallen angel that rebelled against God. If you can look at it astrotheologically, you can look at it metaphorically, archetype mindset, but then it kind of makes sense. And okay, so we're a bunch of rebels. Yet, however, I like rebels. Rebels are good. Look at Mel Gibson. Braveheart. William Wallace, big fan of William Wallace, huge fan. And at least the archetype presented for William Wallace, I love that one scene where he's like, "You can take our land, you can take our lives, but you can't take our freedom." It's like the energy's like, "Yeah, dude, we're with you, man. Let's go." I'm like, if somebody was saying that to me, and there's these tyrants coming down with these tanks, and I'm like, okay, I've got two options here. I can go underneath that tank. I'll be on my knees. I'm sorry, mister. They'll run over me anyway. Or I can go with William Wallace, and we can go out in a blaze of glory. What are your options? So I think a lot of people are like, "Let's stay all right. I'm sorry. I got 5 more seconds left. 5, 4, 3, 2. They're done. But yeah, it's pretty wild. So I'm looking at this is bizarre. The show that we're doing right now is like the viewers, it's been going up, slowly up to about 800, 850. And then all of a sudden spike down, spike up, spike down, spike up, spike down. That's bizarre. It's like they're trying to.
No, either that or we were using words that were triggering people.
I don't think it was people. I think it was like they were getting booted. I don't think they were intentionally leaving.
Yeah, okay. Spikes. When I say words that are triggering, these are called keywords. The echelon system is real, okay? The Skynet lives. There's artificial intelligence that's already been booted up and is running things behind the scenes. It has been for some time. And it's working very well. I think it's the foundation of the Matrix to begin with. Some very advanced artificial life form is running this Matrix. Now, Jerry Wills claimed that one of the things that happened to him in Peru when he went down there, a lot of people have weird things. That's where David Icke started his weird journey to where he's at now. Things really got heated up when he went to Peru, okay? Jerry Wills went there, went into this, at Lake Titicaca, he went inside, it's called the doorway of the whatever, Amamaru, something or other. It looks like a faux doorway, a false doorway, carved into a cliff face. And he claimed he was able to go through it to another place altogether, and that basically he was told while he was there that we're in a computer simulation here. Now, I don't know how that's even possible he could do that, but that's what he claims. Another guy from Australia who was taken on board by extraterrestrials, allegedly hermaphroditic extraterrestrials, took him on board, took him out to their home world. On the process, they had him in this kind of like suspended animation sort of deal. And they told him, they said, we're leaving the simulation. We're leaving, transiting through a simulation into like another dimension. So they were admitting it. That's and a lot of that stuff, though, again, we can't prove it. Just saying it's anecdotal, and maybe that's the case, Rex. I don't know, but the bottom line is we're here now. Whatever this is, we're here now. We have to do something, and doing nothing is, to me, is not a good option. Just letting it continue down this course, it seems kind of crazy, because we do have free will. And we should exercise it. And that's one of the reasons I'm not really a fan of politics or religion, because it basically says, I don't want to decide. You decide for me. I'll just follow you because I think you got the answers because you're my superhero, And you ever notice how these preachers and politicians, they always talk about, we got to do this, we got to do that. Fuck no, I don't have to do anything unless I really want to. Or unless you're trying to force me to. And even then, if I don't want to, it's not we doing it. It's you doing it to me, That's crazy to me. That doesn't make any sense. It's a violation of our free will when they do that kind of stuff. But the problem is, if we agree to it, then it's not a violation of our free will. And that's where the problem is. That's where the media is so damn dangerous, Rex. Media in all its form, it's promoting some really poisonous thoughts.
Well, I think the media can be used for good or for bad. And I can even watch a film, a Hollywood film, a blockbuster movie that a lot of people will look at and they're like, they say, oh, that's demonic, that's wicked, you must worship the devil. I mean, it'd be like just let's, for example, watching the Avengers. They'll say right. Thanos is a representation of, Kronos. And Kronos is, anyway, so you get onto these long spells and stuff like that. But I can watch that and I can say, okay, I see what they're projecting subliminally. I see what they're attempting to forecast, where they want the future to be in certain industries, what they want people to think, what they want people to do. So it's, for me, I can just take it and this is great. I love it. And plus, I love a good movie. But I think I got that from in high school. I had just an amazing teacher that taught us about the media. My communications teacher in my sophomore year, and unfortunately, he's no longer with us. He passed at a pretty young age. But the guy was just brilliant. And he's like, look at this, Rex, you've got a 60-second clip on world news. And then you've got 7 minutes talking about bad plumbing. Like the world news is talking about volcanoes and flooding and horrific stuff. That takes 60 seconds. But then they're doing a 7-minute clip on, plumbing stuff that's flooding, and just low, I'm stepping in poop, but I'm not dying. Stuff like that. It just doesn't make sense, And I really kind of took that, and since then they put a lot of magic in movies, a lot of mysticism, and especially now it's changed so much over the past 30 years. Maybe they're getting better ratings, maybe they're getting more energy, maybe the archons are feeding it that way, but it's almost like a blueprint of the archons. Like they're telling you what they're doing. They're like, do you agree with it or don't you agree with it? Watch The Sixth Day with Arnold Schwarzenegger from 1999 when they were cloning people and they were showing smart appliances and smart fridges from 20 years ago. We're seeing it now, but we're not being told about clones in everyday life. And at the same time, as people say, clones don't have souls. I don't agree with that. I think that a clone can have a soul. I mean, isn't that kind of a lot? It's a lot like, what is it called? What's that? Aminofertilization or something like that. Some interesting medical term that's used when they have to, they can't have a child naturally, so they get science involved.
In vitro. So you're saying
they don't have souls either?
Yeah. No, the physical body is just a vessel.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how it's created, but yes, allegedly a soul or some consciousness, intelligence entity can attach itself on some level energetically to the vehicle. That's my understanding of it. Okay. So yeah, in fact, humans are vulnerable. That's what possession is all about. Or like the guy that claimed he was going to take us off world if we wanted to go. When we started the magazine, he claimed he was a walk-in, or at least that's what he was told, that his soul, his extraterrestrial soul, came into that body during a period of time in his life. And so even though it was the same body, it was a different soul, which is that is really weird. I don't know, but that's what some people believe is possible.
I really appreciate you coming on the program, Robert. And, hope we need to do this again soon. It's been too long. Folks, if you would like to listen to Robert, once again, he is on the radio now worldwide. So leave the information real quick before we close out. Also, that'll be in the video description box. Plus, you can go to Unicus Magazine. Yep. And in closing, I would just like to say, if we are in a simulation, if everything does break down to electricity, an electrical vibration or frequency, the more mental power we have, the more we practice and focus on higher vibrational levels, I think that we can actually manifest that. I mean, I've done Sidzil or Sigil. People get mad at me when I call them Sidzil. So when people get, it's like, oh, it's not a Sidzil, it's a Sigil. They freak out, dude. I'm like,
I unsubscribed and I told everybody, you're just,
I love it. I think it's great when people tell me that they unsubscribe. No,
quit making weird sound effects. They don't take you serious.
It's like, start your own channel and you should do it yourself. You'll do very good at it. Yeah. But anyway, so I just totally lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Sigil. You were saying sigil? Yes.
Yeah, you can make them and do it for yourself. Try it out. You'll be shocked at how well it works. And if everything breaks down into the thought and frequency vibrations, we can actually be the masters of our own universe. We can be the controllers. We can have the keys and we can open it up and move it around.
Hey, listen, you just hit on something really important. I was talking with this Hollywood producer a few days ago. We are being, basically it's a good cop, bad cop, right? God and the devil. If, you can choose to do, right? Just to follow either one, or you could choose to follow neither and do your own thing. And that's what they don't want us to do. That's what they call anarchy. And now I'm not saying do away with complete everything, but I'm talking about, they don't even tell us about the third choice. They always want us to go with, hey, you either got to worship this guy or this guy. Which do you choose? I don't choose either. I realize now, this was part of the conversation for a future show, like Hollywood's going to suddenly start telling us the truth, right? Showing us the truth, and it's all make believe. But it's
subliminally. Like, you can get more truth out of a movie now than the news. But you just have to know what to look for.
So maybe hypothetically, we could talk around a hypothetical character who chooses to neither follow the God or the devil and ultimately creates his own universe. Well, how in the hell does that work? Well, it's a tough decision because it's scary, because then you're basically saying, look, you guys do whatever you want, but I'm going to do what I want, and don't try and distract me. Don't bother me. Don't dictate to me about who you're following and why. You want to go down that road, you choose to do that, that's your problem, okay? I choose to be myself. And ultimately what this producer and I were talking about, he says, that may be the ultimate test here. Jerry says, you ever stop and think that maybe that's really the people, the souls they're looking for, is the ones that have enough courage and strength to actually stand up and say, you know what? I don't need to follow anybody, God, devil, or politicians or whatever. I don't need to. I choose not to. Okay, I choose not to. And I felt that for a long time, but now I guess that's the thing. Look, this is one of the reasons I tell people the answer for me, what I suggest to others, is to be calm, kind, and creative. There's nothing religious or political or philosophical or financial, anything that's completely on you to take control of your emotions, your thoughts, your emotions, and your deeds, all on without getting caught up in this left, right, stuff, pointing fingers and saying, oh, they're bad, we got to kill them and all that crap. It's nonsense. Calm, kind, and creative. I know it sounds overly simplistic. I agree with you if you say that's stupid, Robert, but try it. It's not that easy. It really isn't. Okay. And I know people get tired of me saying this all the time, but somebody has to say, I think sometimes you have to be reminded about something. It's, in fact, because it's so obvious and it's so empowering and it's really neutral. It's a very neutral thing. It's taking yourself out of this left, right extremism. Okay. And they want us to go that way because you know what? Balance is always found in the middle of two extremes. So if you really want to be centered, if you really want to be balanced, in my opinion, that's what you can do. And the more you practice all three of those things in your life, you'll start to feel more balanced instead of being pulled one way or the next. And that's when especially the creativity part, like I said, I'm really excited. My level of creativity is actually increasing which is a good sign. That means my soul is being expressed here, you know, and I'm sharing it with everybody in a very neutral way. I'm not promoting anything. I'm just sharing with you that, you know, my creativity. And speaking of that, since I brought it up, Rex, we're going to try and share the screen here. Okay. See if we can do this. See if this works for audio. This is a collaborative effort, a song called "Ghost in the Rain." If it doesn't come through, Rex, you got to tell me. All right, if you can't hear the audio can you actually see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let me see if I can go full screen. Ah, shoot.
If you go full screen, it'll just go back to you. That's the way that it works.
I didn't know that. Okay, hang on.
Yeah, so you can go back to, but even if you do full screen, you could probably play the audio. It's
okay. Never mind. It's cool. Let's try this.
Let's go back. Stand by, ladies and gentlemen.
Is that coming through?
Not yet. Nothing.
Okay. I did it before when we started the show. What happened?
It was working fine, yeah. But when you hit that full screen, so maybe you can close out of it. Close this looks like are you still sharing the screen even though you're not? If I was, you hit stop share and just start over.
Stop. Gallery.
Yeah.
Stop.
No big
video.
deal.
No. Ah, man. Sorry. This is a good song.
Yeah, it is a good song. It's a really good song. We'll get it.
Share meeting.
No.
Oh, here we go.
All right. Here we go.
No.
Okay. Ghosts in the Rain. Collaborative effort. 3 people's creativity. We never met each other. We just did this through a website. Okay. I play the instrument as the ghost.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are now listening to Ghosts in the Rain. Robert Stanley.
And drunken facts with words so vicious. I left you like a sickness. Don't go. The words you whisper to my soul. There's no horizon, just ghosts in the rain. I fill you with love so you fill me with pain, and I can't love you in this crazy fucked up way. You know I can't stay, you know I can't stay.
Right on. How do you?
Cool.
All right, we go ahead and hit the stop screen share, if you would, please, sir. That was amazing, man. That was off the hook. And I'm looking at the live comments, and everybody agreed except for one person, and they said, "Soft rock?" Question mark. That was like the only bad comment out of everything. Everything else, it's awesome. That's beautiful. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, but again, this is creativity. I went on the internet one day. I got this new. Oh, by the way, people want to know what kind of weird instrument was that? It's called a Rolly Seaboard. ROLI is the name of the company in England, and it's the weirdest damn keyboard I've ever seen. It's called 5D Touch. You just Google it. You will not believe this. Seaboard, Rolly Seaboard. And that was the ghostly thing that was going on, sort of like a whistling, whatever. That's all one thing. It's like, it's got keys, but you can do vibrato. You can kind of do these weird slides. You can raise the thing, and it's all just touch. So I was experimenting with it, and I went on a website where you can just collaborate with people you've never even met. You just add your whatever to the file, and that's where we ended up with it. So for Halloween, that's my gift to you guys. Happy Halloween. No tricks, no treats. Sorry. Oh, that is my treat. Okay, that's my treat for you. Ghost in the Rain.
That's way better than genetically modified E. coli feces and chocolate. It's not even real chocolate. You know, you got some bleached sugar and some aspartame and some
glyphosate candy. Yes.
Gotta love
Courtesy
it.
of Monsanto. Yes. Very cool.
Hey, kids, go out and get a bunch of glyphosate. You're going to love it. It's like, so just imagine how horrific it would be. You get a piece of candy, you find something, it's like, man, somebody injected poison in that thing. You know, that person's going to prison for a really long time that did that. Yet corporations can put poison in the candy all they want. They can sell it and be like, oh, it's so good. Got less calories.
You know what's so insidious about that, Rex? Is that it's toxic, but it doesn't kill you just like that. It slowly makes you sick and sick and sicker. Right. And that's why you see all kinds of weird problems popping up now more than ever, just from eating food. People, they call it a food allergy. No, it's the chemical allergy. Nobody is like immune to glyphosate. And so you see things like acid reflux is becoming increasingly prominent across the world because of GMO, the fake seed, the fake food, and the chemicals. It's crazy. Anyway, my friend, I always look forward to these conversations with you, even though we talk about some really dark stuff. I love you, Rex. Keep up the great work, and be good to yourself and your family.
Right on, Robert. I love you too, brother. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Looking forward to next time. This is the best way to bring light in a dark situation. While I wear my dark robe for Halloween.
That's a good look, man.
I'll be right there, Lucifer. I must go now, ladies and gentlemen. Be excellent to each other and be the change you want to see.